Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and decode Peter Thiel's fascinating framework for how we can create a completely new, vastly better future. Look, we live in a world where it is incredibly tempting to just look at what's already working around us and, well, copy it. It feels safe, right? But according to Thiel's book Zero to One, simply repeating what's already been done before is actually a massive trap. Today, we're going to explore why true global progress actually relies on creating entirely new things, what he calls working miracles. This whole explainer is really about understanding the nuts and bolts of how those miracles actually happen. So I want to challenge you right out of the gate with this. It's the ultimate contrarian interview question, and it forces you to completely abandon consensus. What important truth do very few people agree with you on? Now, it sounds super simple, doesn't it? But actually, it's intensely difficult. It's intellectually tough because, think about it, literally everything we are taught in school is agreed upon by definition. And it's psychologically tough because answering it honestly means you have to say something you know for a fact is going to be unpopular. But finding your personal answer to this question, it is absolutely crucial. It's the prerequisite to building the future. Because brilliant thinking is rare, sure, but courage is an even shorter supply.
To even begin answering that question, we first have to recognize the madness of crowds. Finding a delusional popular belief is practically the skeleton key to uncovering the hidden truth right behind it. Consider this absolutely brilliant observation from Nietzsche. If you can step back, take a look at what absolutely everybody around you just blindly agrees on, and then realize that their consensus might actually be a giant bubble of delusion, well, you've just found your starting point. You've found the contrarian truth.
All right, here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The contrarian question. 2. Two types of progress. 3. The power of startups. 4. The 1990s dot-com context. And 5. Rethinking conventional wisdom.
Section 1. The contrarian question. Thinking beyond consensus.
A truly strong answer here doesn't just pick a side in some familiar, tired debate. It completely flips a widely accepted assumption right on its head. When you ask people this contrarian question, honestly, most give pretty bad answers. They'll say, oh, our education system is broken, or there is no God. Those are bad answers. Why? Because they're just taking a side in an argument everyone's already having. A genuinely good answer requires you to isolate an X that society universally accepts as an absolute given and boldly state why the exact opposite is the real truth. These answers are as close as we can possibly get to looking directly into the future. Moving on to Section 2. Two types of progress, horizontal versus vertical. So let's break this down. If you build 100 typewriters, well, that's horizontal progress. But if you sit down and invent the word processor, boom, you've made a vertical 0 to 1 leap. When we imagine the future, we inherently imagine progress, but it takes two totally distinct forms. Horizontal, or extensive progress, is super easy to picture because we already know what it looks like. You're just copying things that already work, going from 1 to n. But vertical, intensive progress? That means doing something literally nobody has ever done before, going from 0 to 1. It's a singular act of creation. Picture it like a simple graph. On the horizontal axis, you've got copying things that work. On the vertical axis, doing brand new things. By mapping our efforts out like this, we can immediately figure out if a business model or even an entire national strategy is fundamentally about just copying or if it's actually about inventing. Now, at a macro level, horizontal progress is basically just globalization. Take China, for example. They are straightforwardly copying 20th century American models to modernize. Their 20-year plan is essentially to just become what the US is today. They're taking 19th century railroads, 20th century air conditioning, and just rolling them out on a massive, massive scale. Sure, they might skip a few intermediate steps, like jumping straight to smartphones without bothering to install landlines. But make no mistake, they are copying. They are marching right along that horizontal axis. But the single word for vertical, 0 to 1 progress, that's technology. Most folks assume the future is going to be defined by globalization, but the contrarian truth here is that technology matters so much more. And frankly, here's the scary truth. If every one of India's hundreds of millions of households suddenly started living exactly the way Americans do today, but only used our current horizontal tools, the result would be an absolute environmental catastrophe. In a world with scarce resources, globalization without totally new technology is completely unsustainable. We literally need technological miracles just to survive. Section 3. The power of startups, the vehicle for 0 to 1. So how do we get these miracles? Well, startups hit the absolute sweet spot.
They are the largest group of people you can convince to build a different future without getting bogged down by endless corporate red tape. Historically, whether you're looking at the Founding Fathers or the Royal Society, it's always small groups bound by a fierce shared mission that actually change the world. Big organizations, they move like molasses and they hate risk. In bad bureaucracies, just looking like you're working is better for your career than actually doing the work. On the flip side, a lone genius might write a great novel, but they can't build an entire industry by themselves. Startups are that perfect middle ground. Their real superpower isn't just that they're nimble. It's that being small literally gives them the mental space to think from first principles. All right, Section 4, the 1990s dot-com context. Let's uncover the real history here. So everyone conventionally thinks the late 90s tech market just went completely crazy with greed, right? But if you unpack this timeline, you see a cascading series of global economic failures that made the internet economy the only hopeful way forward. We tend to look back at the 90s with these rose-colored glasses. You've got the euphoria of the Berlin Wall falling, sure, but then watch the dominoes fall. You hit the East Asian financial crisis in 97, economies brought to their knees. In 98, the ruble crisis, Russia defaults on its debt, and investors are suddenly terrified because you're looking at a country with 10,000 nukes and literally no money. That triggered the collapse of the massive U.S. hedge fund long-term capital management. The euro launched, and nobody cared. The old economy was completely failing. So when dot-com mania hit in late 98, it wasn't just irrational exuberance. It was because this new internet economy was quite literally the only lifeboat left. Something had to work.
Finally, Section 5, Rethinking Conventional Wisdom and Learning the Right Lessons.
Get this. During the boom, PayPal paid users $10 just to sign up, and another $10 for every friend they referred. It was an exponentially growing cost that actually made sane economic sense to them. Peter Thiel and the PayPal team lived this firsthand. They had this massive sweeping vision: create a new internet currency to replace the US dollar. But to do that, they needed at least 1 million users, fast. Traditional ads? Way too expensive. So they literally just handed you $10 to join. It drove exponential growth. And yeah, it meant exponentially growing costs, which sounds absolutely insane today. But they did the math. They knew with a massive user base, a tiny transaction fee would eventually make them profitable. They were engineering a 0-to-1 moment. And the timing here is absolutely wild. They secured $100 million in vital funding just weeks before the massive market collapse erased all that 90s optimism. They knew the boom wouldn't last, so they capitalized on the hype and raised that $100 million in March of 2000. Right after that, literally mid-March, the Nasdaq peaked. Weeks later, the whole thing completely tanked. By the time the dust settled in 2002, society looked at this crash like it was some kind of divine punishment for the optimism of the 90s. All that genuine hope was quickly rebranded as just crazed, arrogant greed.
And the trauma of that crash created a huge overcorrection. It birthed this reactionary conventional wisdom that grand visions are super dangerous and that tiny, incremental steps are the only safe way to play it. This brings us right back to the madness of crowds. The lessons we took from that crash still mess with our business strategies today. The new rules became only make incremental advances. Anyone pitching a grand vision is probably a scammer trying to inflate another bubble. Be humble. Take small steps. But look, the truth pushes back against this incredibly hard. Because if we only take small, safe horizontal steps, we are never going to invent the technologies we desperately need to escape a stagnant, zero-sum future.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. To truly innovate, to actually go from 0 to 1, are you willing to question all those safe ideas and write a completely new plan for the world? You just can't put innovation into a neat little formula. The most powerful way to succeed is to find value in completely unexpected places by thinking from first principles. So I'm asking you, what is your contrarian truth? What is the one massive thing you know for a fact that everyone else thinks is just madness? Find that, and you just might be ready to build the future.